Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome to another edition of #AskRobCo. Super excited for another amazing guest. We're on a brilliant run at the moment, getting some really great, inspirational, motivational people here for you, for the audience on a Friday. So massive welcome to Anthony from 359, and he's going to explain who that is, what they are, what they do. So big welcome to Anthony on this Friday, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to hear everything you've got to say. Share with us your story, your journey, what's brought you here, and give a bit of wisdom and feel good factor and happiness on this Friday afternoon. So thank you for joining, Anthony. Before I give you the opportunity to do your intro and tell everyone who you are and what you're about. For those of you who are joining for the first time today, the way it works is you've got the question box on the right hand side. You ask the question and we give you the answer. This platform is for you. It's for you to get motivation, inspiration, education, a bit of happiness, a bit of positivity on a Friday. So ask away, take advantage of the great guests we've got today, and please make sure you invest in the good questions to make sure Anthony Taylor from 359 gives us some great insights. So over to you, Anthony. Tell us your story, what's your background, and what you're doing these days.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for inviting me on today, Rob. No small feat there to hopefully give some value today away to people, but we'll see what we can do. So yeah, my name is Anthony Taylor from 359. That's a business I founded a few years ago. We're a mental skills training consultancy. Basically, we do a lot of speaking, a lot of training, a lot of writing, all around that sort of field of what I call mental fitness. And prior to that, I had almost 20 years in the corporate world. And so I started out initially, left university pretty frustrated and a bit bored, if I'm being honest, 2 years early into a 4-year degree, and then set up my own business. Ran that for about 18 months, got a bit fed up with that, and set myself some really rather silly goals, I think, just way too achievable.
What was the degree and what was the business that you set up?
Yep, so I left university. I went into doing a 4-year business administration degree with Manchester Metropolitan University, and then after 2 years, I'd done the HND component of it. I got pretty fed up by education at that point, and decided to go and set up my own business. So what I was doing was marketing security products to students, various alarms and other things, and doing some other bits and things on the side. And I ran that, set that up as a limited company, and I learned more from doing that in the 18 months than I did, I think, in my 2-year HND due to convert to a degree. And then so I did that, and then, like I say, I got pretty fed up with that. And I think there's a theme which I'll come on to, which is why it's led to what I do today. And then got fed up with that and was feeling a bit lost, if I'm being honest. Really didn't quite know what I wanted to do with my life. You know, my little brother, who's a few years younger than me, knew from the age of 11 that he wanted to be a surgeon, and that's what he is now. He's a great surgeon up in Leeds, but I never had that. And you know, even at age 40, really, I didn't really know. It wasn't until I got to 40 that I really knew what I wanted to do in my life. So I'd sort of closed this business down after 18 months, and then I went into PR because somebody said to me, "Well, you'd be good, you'd give the gab. You know, you're great with people, and you'd be good at PR." So I literally went along. I researched who were the top 2 or 3 PR agencies in Manchester at the time, and this is going back in 1992, 93, and I managed to blag my way into a conversation with the chief exec of one of them, and I got past the gatekeeper by pretending I knew him, I was a friend, and then I literally just said to him, "Look, I'm thinking about getting into PR, but I really don't know what's involved, what you look for, so if I can have a conversation with you, then I can go away and decide if it's for me, and if it is, I'll go and get whatever you need, and you know, then I'll be ready." And he said, "Well, look, come in for a chat." So I went in for a chat. We hit it off, got on really well. And after about an hour, he said, "Well, look, we might be recruiting in a month or so's time. If I give you a call, would you be up for the interview?" That call came, Went for an interview along with a bunch of other people, got the job, and then spent the next few years working in PR, about 5 or 6 years.
Just going to interrupt. Sorry, Anthony.
Mm.
What made you understand or think that you'd go to one of the top few companies in the PR world as being an entry point into that area? Did someone tell you that? Was that something that you just thought of naturally? Tell us that point, because it's such an important one. It's something that I share with many of the guests and the audience, in the sense that, you know, I'm in real estate and property, and I understood I wanted to work for the biggest real estate property company in the world. That was CBRE, and I made it my mission to go to them. So, you know, for me, I understood it. If I was going to learn a trade, I wanted to learn from the best. So you're going into an industry. What was your thought process behind going to the top 3 names or brands that you were aware of at that point?
I think it's an interesting one. So I've always started out a big believer in personal development as well. So what I did initially was to do a bit of research on who were the top ones. And I also happened to come across during that research the name of a small agency that was in the next town along from where I lived, just outside Manchester. So I rang her up. Jean Patilla was her name. She ran a little outfit called Patilla PR, and had a conversation with her. And she said, oh, you know, these are the main players which fitted with what I'd found. This is the name of the guy that runs one of these. And that was great. So that gave me the name of the contact who to go and speak to. So that's why I focused on that agency rather than the other two. But like always, I've always tried to seek out who can I learn, and that's not who can I learn from, who's the best. And that's something I do even to this day. You know, if I want to learn a new skill, develop a new skill, I will look at who are the really good people in that area. So I'm doing a lot of blogging at the moment, and using that as a sideline to develop my business and develop another income stream. And so I've gone to who are the best bloggers in the world, what can I learn from them, and I've invested in their ebooks and some of their online courses and those kind of things. So I'm always about developing and seeking out the best talent in that area and looking what I can learn from them, trying to, you know, shorten that journey where possible. But I think it's an interesting balance, that shortening the journey, because one thing when I look back at my career overall and what led me to doing what I do now was I don't, you know, although I was pretty successful in PR and I did that for a number of years, and I got to the head of department for the large, large brands like Berry and the General Medical Council and several large local authorities, running some big PR teams. It left me feeling a little bit sort of unfulfilled, and I hadn't really fulfilled what I wanted to do, which was, you know, going back in the day, 18, 19, I wanted to run my own business. I didn't want to be an employee. And I always had that sort of entrepreneurial bent. But I think what I lacked, and I wrote about this recently in an article, was I lacked the maturity to realize that actually these things take time to develop. So yeah, you can set lots of great goals and all the rest of it, but actually you need to learn your craft. And you need to put the time and the dedication to get really good at something. And I think, if I'm being honest, looking back, I lacked the maturity to do that. I was great out of the gate, you know, loads of motivation, all the rest of it. But over the course, that would wane, and I would lose focus, and then I go on to the next thing. And I think that sort of followed me through. And it's really only when I got to age 40, I've been made redundant, and that was the 3rd time in my career I've been made redundant because of organisational change and restructuring.
You've gone into PR.
Yeah.
You've in the corporate world doing what?
So I got into PR, worked for this particular agency in Manchester. Then I'd gone down to London. I was working for a great agency down in London, just off Portland Street. And then at that point, age 26, 27, if I'm being honest, I was getting a bit fed up with it again. It felt a bit empty. It wasn't what I was doing. And then I went out for dinner with an ex-girlfriend one night, and I got a call from her dad about 2 o'clock in the morning. He was a very successful entrepreneur and lawyer. And he said, look, he had some property out in the Caribbean in a law firm. And he said, I've just bought a publishing company, but it's going down the tubes. It's about 6 months away from bankruptcy. I need someone I can trust to have a go at turning it around. Do you want to give it a go? So I go, okay, I'll tell you what, we'll do a deal. You pay off my credit card debt in here in England, and I'll go out and work for you. And he said, done. So I went out there, I literally arrived in this country. I didn't know a single soul. It was the Turks and Caicos in the Caribbean. And this business was literally probably about 3-4 months away from going bust. So I worked my socks off for 6 months to really turn that around. And over the next 3 years, really turned it around. We launched a new title, got it back on a really strong financial footing, yeah, really enjoyed that experience. And then ended up being headhunted to go and work for an online gaming company out in Antigua. So I moved from the Turks and Caicos out to Antigua, did that for 12 months, turned that around. Then the business, the two owners of the business there sort of fell out with each other. It was a bit of a mess. So decided to come back to the UK. And I've been honest, I really struggled to get a job. And I was flabbergasted because I had a great career in PR for like 5 or 6 years. You know, I've been promoted year on year for 3 years.
Well, why is that now? Just to understand the context.
What, sorry, what was that?
Age, you're struggling to get a job. What age?
Yeah, struggling to get a job. Came back aged 30.
30. So you've got a nice, whatever, 10 years, 12 years behind you. You've set up your business, you've done your PR, you've turned around companies. You're in a pretty good place. That's pretty decent experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I came back to the UK and I just got married, and I thought my wife at the time was Canadian. I thought she's going to struggle to get a job. She ended up getting a job within 2 weeks, and I spent 9 months.
Wow.
Could not get a job, just couldn't get people to see what I'd done and the value and the experience. And I think it's because assumptions. I think people couldn't understand it. I think I thought Caribbean, it's a bit of a jolly, it's a bit of Baywatch, you spend all this time drinking in bars. They really couldn't see. And I think they're a little bit afraid of that, really. Couldn't, and because I didn't fit into a box, because you've done something a bit different, I didn't fit into their expectations. That I think that really sort of held me back a bit. So I ended up going back to what you know, which was PR. I ended up going right back to the bottom rung of the ladder, age 30, which was a real dent to the ego as well, if I'm being honest. And then managed to work myself back up pretty quickly. But it got so low that in that 9-month period, I ended up pushing a trolley around picking for Very Group, who were now one of the biggest online retailers in the UK, 1.6 billion in sales. I ended up pushing a trolley around one of their warehouses from 6 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon on minimum wage, just to bring in some money and just to stem the slide of my self-esteem, if I'm being honest. And that can get into that doubt, that negative self-talk. You start questioning yourself and thinking, really, am I up for this? Can I do this? Have I got what it takes? Can I do anything? So that was a real issue. And then, so did that. And then funnily enough, 5 years later, having started back at the bottom of PR, I was their head of comms at Very Group. So I'd gone from pushing a trolley around through a slightly circuitous route through 2 different companies, but was recruited to be head of corporate PR for Very Group. So wow. I think for me, that sort of, just shows when you got that tenacity and some of that self-belief, it doesn't matter. You can work your way back up pretty quickly.
Tell me, I mean, it's quite a personal thing to share, but was that real rock bottom for you, or you're going down with the trolley and you're pretty down, you've got so much to offer the world, but was that the point where you absolutely hit a rock bottom and you've grown from there and used that, let's call it suffering, as your motivation, or is there something even more challenging than that moment?
I think there were 2 key moments. That was certainly one. It's probably the lowest. That's the nearest I've come to depression. I was certainly experiencing really low mood. So there were days when my wife would go out, we had an apartment, she would go out to work, and I'd just go back to bed and shut the curtains, and I really didn't want to get out of bed. And the phone would ring and I wouldn't answer it. And I had probably about a week to 10 days of that real low mood. And then I got a bit of a break. I started to get a couple of interviews again, and I picked up again, and we went from there. But yeah, that was certainly the lowest. And then the next probably one was when I was age 40. And so I did that piece, got back into PR, did pretty well, got to head of department, like I said, for them. Several other head of department roles came along, and I did those, and I built up a bit of reputation, and that was all really good. And then age 40, I just recently unexpectedly got divorced. And then unfortunately my mum had passed away in the January from cancer. And then a couple of months later, I was made redundant again, for the third time because of organisational change. And I just thought, you know, I remember sitting in my lounge, my friends had come up. I really wasn't interested in the 40th birthday party because my mum had just, you know, just put there for my mum. And so the guys came up and just had a quiet curry, went for a couple of beers, and that was it. And I remember sitting after they'd gone the next day in my lounge thinking, I'm 40 years of age, I'm broke, I'm single dad with 2 kids, and I'm surviving on a bit of a top up from my dad, just because even though I had a good salary, I was making, you know, 40, 45 grand a year, whatever it was at the time. You know, living where I was in Sale, the commute, because I had a long commute, it just wasn't a lot left over. And again, you know, I'm now finding myself unemployed. And at that point, I thought, there's only one thing I can do here, and that actually is to take a time out and think about, what am I going to do for the next 20, 30 years of my life? I don't want to be doing this. I'm really fed up with it. I've got to, what's my passion? What's my purpose? And I'll do whatever it takes. So I took 2 or 3 months out, thinking, what the hell's a bit more debt? You know, when you're in that much debt, what the hell's a few more grand? And I really focused on, actually, it was coaching and training, developing other people. Because when I'd started out with my own business, when I was, you know, left university, a mentor of mine had introduced me to personal development gurus like Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar, and I'd loved that stuff. I'd really lapped it up. And then I'd sort of forgotten about it and moved away from it. And I'd realized during my time in the corporate world, I'd become a coach. One organization had paid for me to become an in-house coach and develop a team alongside the day job, and I love that. And I thought, you know what, that's what I want to do. And I want to focus on what I now term sort of mental fitness, really, which is, as I see, it's an intersection between mental toughness, and I'll explain why it's not just that, mental health, which I do a lot of, so I'm a licensed mental health first aid trainer, and emotional intelligence. And I think when that, for me, is mental fitness, is the intersection of those 3 key things. And I think that's really important.
Mental fitness is one of the key drivers of 359, and that's built around emotional intelligence, mental well-being,
mental toughness, and mental health. And the reason, you know, mental toughness in itself is a really key thing, and I do a lot of work with organisations and individuals around that. But it's funny, I was having a conversation with my best friend about that, and he found it, and I still find it with a lot of people. It polarizes that term, mental toughness. People think, well, the opposite of that is mental weakness, and it isn't. But it's quite a polarizing term. People either kind of embrace it or they really don't like it. But when they start to really understand it, they can see that the benefits in it. And then you've got the mental health bit, the well-being bit, which is so important these days because, you know, as we all know, we all have mental health, and it can be quite fragile at times. There are life events such as I've been through and many others have been through that can have a big impact on that and can reduce your mental well-being. So when we start to destigmatize that and talk about that and view the mental health alongside the mental toughness piece, you can start to really develop somebody. And then the emotional intelligence bit is, just quickly, Rob, is around understanding yourself. Because when you start to really understand yourself and how you're thinking, how your emotions, then you can tend to get better interactions with other people.
Yeah, so self-awareness is one of the big themes I keep pushing the whole time.
Definitely.
Go deep within, learn who you are, what you represent, what makes you happy, what makes you sad, what are your triggers. And when you can learn about yourself and you're self-aware, it's the platform and the foundation to do everything and move forward. But it's probably one of the hardest things that you can actually, one of the hardest things to find. You can go through your whole life investigating who you are and trying to become self-aware. It's very difficult, but worth the investment. So let's go into mental health and well-being, and maybe some good practical advice and support we can give. We have a lot of young listeners and viewers who continuously ask questions around that, and also mental toughness. Just like how do you get it? Like, you know, practically speaking, like what is it? How do you become mentally tough?
Sure. So yeah, certainly. I mean, I think around the mental well-being things, there are lots of things that we can do. We know that from a lot of research, it's the disconnection from things that tends to drive a lot of mental ill health. And what I mean by it is this disconnection from nature, from being outside. And we tend to see that mental health in big cities like London and Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, these kind of places, tends to be poorer in the inner cities than it is in the outside. So anything we can do to get outside and get in greenery is essential. There's a lot of research to back that up. Disconnection from other people, and we've seen because of lockdown, mental health has risen because we've all been stuck indoors and on Zoom and things. So that interconnection with other people is absolutely important as well. Disconnection from nature, disconnection from people, disconnection from values, really taking the time to understand your values and who they are. Most people think, oh, my values, honesty and integrity and those kind of things. But I mean more than that, really understand what are your driving values. And if people go online and look at the Barrett Values Center, BARRETT, there's a free online assessment there you can take to better understand what values are and mean, and that I think that's really essential. So values, disconnection from meaningful work, which is why, and I've experienced this having been unemployed for a couple of times in my career in that 9-month period, just how soul destroying that can be and how taxing on mental health that can be. So anything you can do, whether it's just even volunteering, something's going to give you that feel-good factor, that sort of sense of worth back, that sense of helping other people as well, will be essential, even if it's only temporary. So there's disconnections from some of those key things can be the drivers for poor mental health for sure.
Great. And mental toughness, how do we get it? And we've got loads and loads of questions, so we're going to have to go super fast to get through these.
Yeah, no problem. So very quickly on mental toughness, we all have it. We know from a lot of the research that some people are born a bit more resilient than others, a bit more mentally tough. You develop it by a number of different things. Firstly is by going through scenarios and situations in life that are going to tax you, they're going to stretch you. It's a bit like, I use the analogy of getting fit, bodybuilder, athlete, whatever it is. When the athlete's working out, they're breaking their muscles down. And it's when they're recovered, they actually start to grow. So you can't get fitter without actually doing something. To build your mental toughness, you have to do something. And there are multiple tools that we use in 6 key areas things that you can do to build mental toughness. So I think my recommendation with that from people is, look, you will, by going through adversity, you'll build up a certain amount of resilience. But there's loads of free content. And if people want to go onto my blog, I've got lots of articles, be adding them on tools and techniques you can do to start to build up mental toughness. So start to understand what we mean by what mental toughness is. That's a great place and to understand that, see whether you agree with that, and then look at how you can start to develop your mental toughness in that. And there's so many different tools and techniques, we could go on for hours really.
Great. Let's get some very quick fire questions. Okay. What does 359 mean and stand for?
359 alludes to the 359, 3 minutes, 59 seconds, and Roger Bannister when he broke the 4-minute mile. And the reason I chose that is that leading up to him doing that, everyone used to believe that the prevailing wisdom was that you couldn't do it. The human body could not run a mile in under 4 minutes, but he didn't. He didn't believe that, and he set his mind to, and even though he was a junior doctor back in the days when junior doctors worked 80, 90 hour, 100-hour weeks, he could only dedicate an hour a day for training. And yet he still achieved that amazing feat. And a lot of that was around his mindset to being able to believe that he could do that. And the persistence, even after failures. If you look back at Roger Bannister's running career, he had a couple of failures, including quite an embarrassing one in the Olympics, just a few years before him breaking their 4-minute mile. But he recovered from that and went on to do that. And then, of course, he changed the mindset to the whole world about what was actually possible. And, in a few weeks after he did it, suddenly more and more people started to break the 4-minute mile. Now, of course, it's nothing in particular in terms of peak level athletics. So that's why I chose 359 in terms of, being able to overcome achieve more than what you thought you're capable of, and change the mindset to the world about what's actually possible.
Great question, Anthony. It's one of my favorite questions, actually. What is your motivation and what gets you up in the morning?
I think it's a great question. The reason for me starting 359 and doing what I do now, and it's been a long slog, I've been doing this since I was age 40 and 48 now. It's been really tough in the first few years to keep going. There's a lot of financial hardship. There's a lot of self-doubt. But when it comes down to this, is really helping other people to achieve more than they thought themselves capable of. And every time I get a client that says, that's fantastic, you really helped me, or someone that gives me some feedback on a training course, that just fuels it. And that's enough for me, and that's great. And I've been able to build a business over the last 8 years to achieve more than I thought I was capable of.
Listen, I get it. The whole platform here is absolutely built for that.
Yeah.
Help people, and for my selfish reasons, that's what makes me happy. And so that gets me up in the morning, and that's what my motivation is, to give back to society, give back to as many people as possible. That's what fulfills me, and I get it. Okay, I've just finished my social marketing. I've just finished my social marketing and interested in PR, recruitment, etc. How is the best way to get involved? I'm starting at the bottom. I think that might
I would say probably similar to what I've done. I'd network like mad. So go and speak to people in that industry. Ask. People love giving advice. That's what you do, why you do. You're doing well, what I do. We're happy to share advice. So go and speak to as many different people as you can about lessons they'd learned, the challenges, what they do differently, who should they speak to. I think for me now is a brilliant time to get into pretty much anything, but I would start by seeking out some of the people that make those connections, build that network. The power is really in your network. I think there's a thing on LinkedIn that you might have. If you've got 5,000 people on LinkedIn that you're connected with, and maybe that's a lot. If you've got 500 people you're connected with on LinkedIn, your second level down, the people they can introduce you to, is something like 15,000 because of the power of multiplication. And we've seen that in the negative way with COVID. One person affects some of the others. So use your network, ask people, get involved. People love giving advice, and you'll find your way from there.
Brilliant. Okay, we're going to get through as many questions as we can. I'm going to do another 5 minutes because we've got so many here. I just want to help as many people as we can. Do you have any advice from picking yourself up after a loss or a negative experience?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I think I used to see life as, and still do, life as a bit like snakes and ladders. And sometimes you're going to come across a ladder, it's going to take you up, and other times you're going to land on the snake's head and you're going to go back down. Get really clear about what your purpose is and what your passion is and your values, and that will sustain you through some of the dark times. And then I used to see, when I was there 9 months out, when I couldn't get a job, I started to see things as every rejection was one step closer to a yes. And even now in sales terms, I remember did some sales training a couple of years ago, and the guy said to me, look, when you get 2,000 no's, then you'll have a business. And what he meant by that was you're going to speak to clients and they're going to tell you no. But by the time you've accrued 2,000 no's, you'll have won enough yeses and enough business to have a sustainable business. And so that's why I see it now. Every time I get a no from a potential client, it's like, great, that's fantastic. I'm one step and one no nearer to building the business I want.
I think it's important to go a little deeper on that point, because no's are feedback mechanisms, and you learn the trend of the no to do something different to get to the yes. And,
yes.
and that learning is imperative. So yes, the no's are brilliant, as long as you've got the perseverance and the persistence to keep going, keep believing in yourself to reach the yeses. But you also learn so much from the no's if you see why the no's are happening, what the trend is, and then tweak whatever you were doing when you get no's to do something slightly different that creates a yes. And that's really important, because if you get 2,000 no's and you don't change anything or do anything different, it's on the verge of being delusional, because you're believing that you're doing something right when the market is clearly saying you're not, and you're not changing anything to do something different. So I think it's really important to put a bit of context on that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the elements of mental toughness. There are 4 C's that we look at very quickly, and one of those is called challenge. And that's around the mindset of, how do you see failure? Do you look to embrace from it, and do you look to learn from it? And so it goes exactly what you're talking about. If you're doing the same thing, like I think it was Einstein said, madness is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So you're right, look from the learning, what worked, what didn't work, how can I tweak it? I'm doing a lot of blogging and writing for a lot of publications. I've had lots of rejections, and the editor said, actually, can you just change this, and we don't like that, can you go away and think about this? And that's fine, because that's feedback and it's making me a better writer. So the more I do it, the better I get, as long as, like you said, I take the learning and look to adapt.
Got a brilliant question here. What is the perception that a friend might have of knowing that you're suffering mentally from certain experiences, and is it embarrassing for them to know, and does it still cause like a stigma in people?
That's a great question. I think it's one of some of the signs. I think people, it's the changes in behavior that we need to look out for in our friends and our relatives. You know, start to look for those changes, whether that's appearance, whether that's in their language they're using, whether it's in their physical body language and the way they're moving and looking. Are they starting to look a bit disheveled? So look for the changes. And then as someone who might witness those in somebody, ask that question. Just to go, hey, look, you know, Rob, you don't seem yourself today. You know, you're normally clean shaven, you're looking a bit scruffy. Is everything okay? What's going on for you at the minute? And then just be prepared to listen. And I would say there is no stigma. You know, we're all, there isn't, every single one of us has mental health. What's important is where on the continuum are we? And we can move up and down that continuum. And even if someone has got a diagnosed mental health condition, you know, they can still be living a great life. Stephen Fry, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson has talked about his battle with depression and so on. You know, I dare anyone to tell him he's weak. You know, I've got a friend of mine called Alex Staniforth, who's a mountaineer and does amazing feats of endurance, and was bullied systematically as a young man growing up. Really suffered with mental ill health and eating, but he's gone on to attempt Everest twice. So it's really, you know, even if you are suffering at the minute, doesn't mean you're always going to. And it doesn't mean that it's going to stop you from living a great life and doing great things. So the more we can talk about mental health, the more we can open it up and realize that actually, you know, there is no stigma attached. You know, we need to do what we can do. And the more conversations we have, the more we'll get rid of that stigma.
Brilliant. And on the back of that, and I'm going to give a bit of an answer, but hear what you've got to say, is how to learn not to give up after surviving from or recovering from mental health issues, including depression, and maybe your example is a really good one. And I think that, and there's a few other questions around that question, and I keep repeating, and I've said it 3-4 weeks running now on the show. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, Woman's
So glad you said that.
It is the basis and foundation for life. And I know I keep preaching it to the audience, and I know I keep repeating myself, but a lot of the questions you're asking have an answer, and Viktor Frankl goes through the psychology of what that is. It's basically having a reason to live and understanding what that reason is to allow you to overcome whatever challenge life brings to you, because your purpose and meaning for living is always going to be stronger and greater than whatever is thrown against you. And if you have the luck or the persistence to understand the reason, the purpose, the meaning for living, you will overcome any challenge.
I couldn't agree more. I'm so glad you mentioned, because that's exactly the book I was going to reference as well. You know, when we talk about mental health as well, and we talk about achieving goals, you know, even mental health, when someone recovers from mental health, there's lots of factors that go into recovery, but the two key ones are hope and purpose, which is exactly what you're talking about. And the book I use, that's the book I refer to when I'm running some of the courses, is that hope and purpose, is Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And, you know, it sustained me through when I started this business 8 years ago, and I was heavily in debt. And even when I got together with my now fiance, I was a single dad at the time in debt, and she said, look, I believe in you and I believe in what you're doing. So let's give it 3 years. We'll cut our cloth accordingly. We'll make whatever sacrifices we'll make, but give it a go. And through those dark times, through the self-doubt, I always had this belief and this clear sense of these were my values, and this is how my purpose fitted with my values, and therefore that sustained me. So there was never a day when I didn't bounce out of bed in the morning, even when the debts were high and the doubts were a bit high, and not want to continue. And it's, you know, it's okay if you don't. I say to people, it's okay if you don't want to, if you don't know that now. It took me till I was age 40 to really figure that out. I hope people find it sooner. But some of the most interesting, you know, there's a Baz Luhrmann song, Sunscreen, that probably most of your generation watching this won't know of, but look it up if you can on Google. on YouTube, whatever. And in it, he talks about some of the most interesting people he knows are 40 and still don't know what they want to do with their life. But if you can take the time to figure out what that is, that will fuel you all the way through, definitely.
Brilliant. On the right-hand side, handout of the day, let go. It's let go and just take the first step. I keep on driving. If you really want to make a change, you've got to do. To do, you've got to take the first step. So motivation for the week is that. Question of the week goes to Penny. Brilliant question. You get a double win this week, Penny. You get a one-to-one mentor session with me, and you get Anthony's book that he's written, and we're going to get that over to you as well. There are so many questions. Really want to thank the audience for being so patient and giving up your time. We've overrun nearly by 10 minutes. Do want to leave the last word with Anthony, because he's been such an amazing guest, and I think the subject matter and what he's doing within 359 is so powerful, so important. What message do you want to leave the audience with for the weekend? What impact do you want to have in the world, society, on people that you come across and work with? And where can people get hold of you, and how can everyone get in contact with you and follow you?
So I think my message is to really don't underestimate what you can achieve. People, and you have the potential to do so much more than you think you're capable of. Surround yourself with the people that are going to help you get there. Find those values and that purpose, and just don't stop, really. Embrace the learnings, embrace the failures, but adapt and keep going forward, and you'll get to where you want to be. And my impact on the world is really to help as many people do that as possible. That's the theme behind all the articles I write, the workshops I run, the work I do with corporates, the work I do with individuals, really boils down to that key element. And in terms of where can you find me, you can find me on my website, 350, and then it's the digit 9.com. And there's a blog on there, there's a learning hub with lots of resources, videos and other things, free material people can access to improve their knowledge. Or I'm really active on LinkedIn. And also I write a lot on a website called medium.com, which is, I've got a lot of articles on there as well. Or again, all around personal development, mental toughness, resilience, and mental health things as well. So that's where you can find me. Less so on Twitter and Instagram, really on LinkedIn will be the best place.
Amazing, Anthony. Just want a huge thank you to the audience today. They're great questions. I think to understand on the AskROBCO platform, it's your questions that get brilliant answers from experts and specialists that then get shared around all of the platforms, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and then even people that aren't here live get to hear that wisdom and knowledge. And if it changes their lives, and if it puts them on a good path, and if it creates happiness and well-being, then we've all done our bit, and we will continue to do that. That's what the platform's here for. Really appreciate all of your support. Thank you for continuously returning. Thanks, Anthony. Amazing guest. And have a great weekend. Enjoy the sun. Be safe, be healthy, and we'll see you all at the same time next week, 1 o'clock every Friday. #AskRobCo. Take care, everyone.
Cheers, Rob. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.